You've probably seen a dozen of tutorials where people just drop an agent node on a canvas, pick a random model, add a half-baked prompt, and bolt on a few tools. Well, this video is gonna be different. We're gonna be talking about the heart of any agent, the prompt. Because at the end of the day, your agent is only as good as your prompt. I will show you techniques that help to achieve a holy trinity of perfect prompt: consistency, accuracy, and reliability. When you dial in all three, your automations don't just work, they stay working, even if the data is messy, model updates, or the workflow scales. Stick around till the end, because I'm gonna share with you my cheat sheet of model setting, and also all the examples we're gonna look at, with their prompts and workflows. In this demo, I'm gonna be using n8n, but don't worry, even if you are a Make fan, or if you're accessing LLMs directly through API, you can still use the same prompts and model settings that we're gonna be talking about. Okay, let's start with consistency, because if you are building automations with LLM, this is everything. When the output from one step becomes the input for another, a sudden format shift or a tone change can break the whole thing. I'm gonna share 4 techniques to make your output more consistent, starting with this one. First, control your sampling settings, specifically temperature. Now, think of the temperature like a creative dial. Turn it all the way down to 0, and you get robotic precision. Crank it up to 1 or higher, and now you've got the model throwing out wild ideas, like it's been sipping on Red Bull and chaos. So here's a vibe on different levels. 0 to 0.5, basically identical answers every time. Super helpful for stuff like structured JSON, grading rubrics, anything where format really matters. Low range, that's anything from 0.5 to 0.4. Still pretty tame. You will see tiny wording shifts, but it's great for FAQs, docs, short answers. Safe zone. Medium from 0.4 to 0.7. This is your Goldilocks zone. Some creativity, but not off the rails. Think help desk replies, product description, that kind of stuff. High, 0.7 to 1. Now we're getting spicy. This is where you get fun ad copy, brainstorms, story ideas. Less predictable, but way more playful. And then of course there is should we be doing this zone, from 1 to 2. But honestly, you're probably not gonna use it, unless you're looking for a slam poetry. If tweaking temperature isn't cutting it, there is a top P or top K. This basically limits how many tokens options the model can choose from, which helps to cut down on randomness. Setting top P to 0 or top key to 1 gives you super strict, greedy decoding, kind of like temperature at 0. I won't get deep into the details here, it gets nerdy very fast, but I've got a cheat sheet if you want to mess with it. Just remember, one knob at a time. Start with temperature, then tweak sampling. Not all 3 at once. Another solid way to boost consistency, just tell your model to respond in JSON. It cuts down on hallucination and random stuff, and gives you clean, predictable output that your automation can actually run on. If you are using n8n, it's even easier. Flip on requires specific output format, toss in the structured output parser, and drop your JSON schema right here. Including examples in your prompt is hands down one of the easiest way to boost accuracy and log format. Say you ask the model, classify the email as refund, shipping, or product question, and return JSON. It works fine, until it doesn't. Suddenly an edge case. Someone asks if they can exchange this, and the model starts flipping between refund and product question. Or worse, your parser dies, because the model added random field like classification reason. Drop in one solid example, called one shot, or a couple varied one, few shot. It will log the schema, show the label logic, and boom, your output stabilizes and the n8n stops choking on surprises keys. It works especially great for any structured output, like ratings, scores, or tone tweaks. Accuracy, of course, is about getting correct information or the right answer. Some tasks, especially the ones that need complex reasoning or up-to-date information, require specific techniques to help LLM to land on the right conclusion. One popular technique you probably have heard about is called chain of thought. It's when you prompt the model to generate an intermediate reasoning steps, like saying let's think step by step. This can significantly boost reasoning, especially for the tasks involving math, logic, or multi-step process. A bunch of research papers recommend it, and it's an official Google prompt engineering guide. Here's a classic example. When I was 3 years old, my partner was 3 times my age. Now I'm 20 years old. How old is my partner? The paper said that if you run it straight, the model will get confused. But if you add "let's think step by step", then you will see its reasoning and it will come up with the right answer, which is 26 years old. That said, I'm not sure about this anymore. I tested the same prompt with older or smaller models like GPT-4 Mini or Gemini 1.5, and they all handled it just fine. They start reasoning without any extra prompt. So maybe it's less useful these days. But it's still worth knowing, especially if you are working with the models that don't reason well out of the box. The next technique is more advanced. It's called self-consistency, and it's a sneaky good trick to get a better accuracy. Here's how it works. You run a model a bunch of times at a higher temperature to get different reasoning path. Then you pick the answer that shows up the most. It's like letting model to think out loud a few times and then bet on the crowd favorite instead of trusting the random take. Imagine your AI is sorting support emails and you get one like this. Customer talks about refund due to shipping issues. But it's also fine keeping the order if it's resolved quickly. Very nuanced, right? So here's what I do. I run the same analysis 7 times with high temperature and top P at 1 to get a bunch of different takes. You can see it here. The first one returned shipping, second one refund, then shipping again, another shipping. At the end, I got 5 out of 7 returning shipping. And this is my confidence threshold. If 5 out of 7 give me the same result, boom, it's a over 70% confidence, and I can trust the model. If it's below 70%, it's clearly a tricky case, and we can send it to a human instead. You can download this file from the description and play around with this flow. The next technique is step-back prompting. We basically let our model to play project manager. First it plans, then executes. In automations it works especially well, because it forces LLM to think which API or tool to use, and to make every assumption explicit, which makes it easier to verify against a knowledge base or an API doc. In my customer support setup, I use 2-step LLM flow to boost both consistency and accuracy. First, I have a model to break down the request. You're a senior support operator. Break the user request into the smallest answerable questions that must be resolved before deciding which queue to route to: refund, shipping, and product questions. I keep the temperature low, around 0.4, so the output is structured and consistent. Then a second model steps in. Answer the numbered questions you produced, citing policy codes where relevant, and route to refund, shipping, or product questions. This one is set for a higher temperature, anything between 0.7 to 0.9, to give it some room to reason and explore a bit. Also, if you want to increase your output accuracy, you should try to avoid using constraints. Somehow telling model what to do instead of what not to do proved to be much more effective technique. And I'm not 100% sure why. Maybe negatives add cognitive load, or maybe LLMs, just like people, respond better to positive instructions. Either way, prompts framed with clear goal, not warnings, get better, more reliable results. Another solid way to boost accuracy: give your model tools. So if you want it to answer more recent question, you have to give it search tool. It struggles with math, give it a calculator. And there is a special way to prompt for it. I used to just give my agent a simple prompt. Here's your role, here's your goal, here's your tools. Sometimes it worked great, but other times it got weird. The model would skip tools it should use, or worse, do all the steps, then forget to actually give an answer. That's where the React framework, reason then act, comes handy. It's like saying to it, think, do, see what happened, then think again. That loop keeps model on track. You start with thought, just log it so you can see what it's thinking. Then action tells the system which tool to call and with what parameters. Observation feeds back the result so it can continue reasoning with real data. And finally, answer, when it's ready to stop and respond. You will see it cycle through this a few times before landing on the final answer. And it's way more reliable than letting it win it. Now let's talk for a minute about reliability. How do you make sure that your LLM doesn't break your automation at 2 a.m. on Sunday? It's not about just writing one good prompt. It's about building a system around the model that is solid, repeatable, and doesn't freak out when the input gets weird or something changes under the hood. First, document your prompts, like every single one. I used to think I would remember what works, but it's only until you take a break, and then when you come back to this flow, you have no idea why did you make that change. Outputs can shift across the models, settings, or even randomly. Same model, same prompt could give you two different results just because the tokens have the same probability and it picks a random one. But the point is that one tiny thing and the whole system starts behave differently. You can use my Google Sheet template. Link is in the description, just duplicate it. Keep notes, log results, track versions. It feels like overkill first, but when stuff breaks, and it will, future you is gonna be so grateful. If you're serious about this work, you have to automate your prompt testing. Don't just trust your gut. It's so easy to look at couple outputs and say, well, looks fine, and then the moment a slightly different emails comes in and your whole system breaks. Just spin up a quick flow, feed in 20 labeled examples, run it at a 0 temperature, and check if accuracy stays above 95%. It's similar to the flow that I showed you for the self-consistency trick. Now every time you tweak the prompt, you just hit run tests and boom, you have measurable level of confidence. Automate JSON output test is even easier, especially in n8n. You can make the model behave by turning on require specific output parser, and then before adding structured parser, select auto-fixing output parser. You need to connect it to a model. You can use the same model you use for an agent, and then plug in your structured output parser with your JSON schema. Now, even if the model messes up the format a bit, n8n will try to fix it for you automatically. n8n got a bunch of hidden gems like this. Some of them saved me hours I didn't even know I was wasting. I actually made a full video on that if you want to check it out. If you learned something new today, please hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps the algorithm to push it out to more folks. Appreciate you.